The weekend plan with my wife, Melissa, told me she was heading out for a weekend fishing trip with some of her buddies from her office. I thought it was a wonderful plan. I truly wanted her to have a chance to breathe and just relax away from all the stress of her busy work. She spent the entire evening packing her green tackle box and her sturdy, dark rubber boots. She made sure she had enough snacks and supplies to last her for 3 full days out in the woods. Before she climbed into her car and drove away, she leaned over to give me a sweet kiss. She told me that there would not be much phone signal out at the campground, so I should not worry if I did not hear from her for a while. I wished her a wonderful time, thinking she was going to have a very peaceful break. Hashtag a heartfelt surprise on Saturday morning. I woke up feeling very happy. I decided I wanted to do something extra special for her to show her how much I cared about her happiness. I knew her favorite thing in the world was my special homemade fruit pie and a fresh pot of hot coffee. I spent the whole morning in the kitchen, carefully rolling out the dough and brewing the beans. I packed everything into the truck and started the long drive. It took almost 3 hours to reach the remote cabin she had described to me. The road was very bumpy and winding, but I kept thinking about the look of joy on her face when she saw me. But the moment I pulled into the clearing, I felt a heavy weight in my chest. I suddenly wished I had not come at all. A wave of sadness washed over me. Hashtag. Arriving at the campground did not look anything like the quiet place Melissa had told me about. When I looked down at the wooden dock, there were no fishing boats tied up. I looked around the grass, but I did not see any bait buckets or fishing rods leaning against the trees. I scanned the area for people from her office getting ready to head out on the water, but I did not recognize a single soul. Instead of quiet retreat, there were many fancy, expensive cars parked in a row outside the biggest cabin on the lot. Loud music was spilling out from the windows and onto the grass. I could see groups of people laughing and talking loudly on the wooden deck, holding colorful drinks in their hands. As I slowly walked closer, my heart pounding, I saw Melissa through the large glass doors. She was not wearing her old fishing clothes. She was dressed up in a beautiful outfit, looking like she was ready for a big party. A man I had never seen before had his arm wrapped tightly around her waist. I stopped walking right there in my tracks, just standing in the dirt with my cooler in one hand and the warm pie in the other. I watched as Melissa laughed at some secret the man whispered into her ear. Then, someone inside the cabin noticed me standing there like a ghost outside the door. Melissa turned her head, and our eyes met. All the color drained from her face, leaving her looking pale and shocked. The whole room went completely quiet, as if someone had turned off the sound. The man standing next to her quickly moved his arm away and took a step back. In that moment, she realized I was a husband she thought would never show up to surprise her. She dropped what she was holding and ran outside, her voice shaking. She reached out and said, "Michael, please listen. It is not what it looks like." I did not say a word at first. I just looked past her shoulder into the cabin, where the fishing gear was kept. It was all neatly stacked against the wall, and I could see that the store price tags were still hanging off the rods. They had never even been used. I looked her in the eye and asked very quietly, "When did anyone plan on actually going fishing?" She could not give me an answer. The big lie was finally over. There was never a trip with her work friends. It was all just a story she had made up so she could be here at this party with him. That understanding hurt me more than any fight we had ever had in our years of marriage. Hashtag the uncomfortable truth. I did not want to cause a scene in front of all those strangers. I simply put the cooler and the pie down on the wooden porch and turned around to walk back to my truck. Melissa grabbed onto my arm. The tears started to stream down her face. She begged me not to leave, sobbing and saying she was sorry. I gently stepped away from her grip and told her the truth. I told her I had driven all that way just to make her smile, but instead, she had shown me the painful truth. She kept crying, telling me she could explain everything if I would just stay, but I just shook my head slowly. The explanation did not really matter anymore. What mattered was that the person I trusted more than anyone else in the world had planned this whole detailed lie. The long drive home felt like it lasted forever. The pie sat in the seat next to me, still smelling sweet. It was a sad, quiet reminder of the surprise I had wanted to give. My phone kept ringing and buzzing, but I could not bring myself to answer it. I simply had nothing left to say at all. Hashtag, 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 a quiet departure by the time I finally pulled into our driveway at home. I was not even looking for answers anymore. I was just sitting there in the dark, wondering if our marriage could ever be fixed after something like this. The next morning, Melissa came home much earlier than she had planned. Her eyes were puffy and red from a long night of crying. She sat down and finally admitted that the fishing trip had been a lie from the very beginning. She told me that her relationship with this other man was new and that she never wanted me to find out about it in such a way. I looked at her and asked just one thing. If I had not driven to that cabin yesterday, would you have ever sat me down and told me the truth? She looked down at the floor and whispered, "Probably not." That honest answer hurt me even more than all the lies. It showed me how much was really being hidden between us during all our years of being a couple. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag the honest conversation over the next few weeks. We decided to go to counseling together. I wanted to make sure that whatever decisions I made were based on honesty, not just because I was feeling angry. During those sessions, Melissa said she was truly sorry. She did not try to blame anyone else or make excuses for what she did. I was glad she was finally being honest. But I quickly learned that trust is a very hard thing to fix once it has been shattered. The lie had changed the way I looked at every single promise we had ever made to each other. Eventually, after many long talks, we both came to understand a very sad truth. We realized that some marriages end not because the love has completely disappeared, but because you simply cannot trust the other person anymore. It was a very difficult understanding for both of us to come to, but deep down, we knew it was the only way for us to move forward. We needed to find a sense of peace again, even if it meant going our own separate ways. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag rebuilding on solid ground. A few months have passed now, and some of my friends have asked me if I regret going to that lake that Saturday. I always tell them no. I am not sorry I went. The truth was going to come out eventually. Finding out sooner meant that neither of us had to keep living a lie for any longer than we already had. Looking back on it now, I can see that our marriage did not fall apart on that drive to the cabin. That was just the day I finally opened my eyes to see what was already happening. Even though the discovery was incredibly painful, knowing the truth was so much better than being confused. It allowed me to start my life over again on solid ground. I did not want to live in a world that was not real anymore, even if that world felt okay for a short time at the start. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag finding peace today. I still enjoy going fishing. Sometimes I head out to the water all by myself to enjoy the quiet, and sometimes I go with my family. Every once in a while, my mind drifts back to that day. I remember the feeling of excitement I had while packing that pie, wanted to surprise the person I loved so much. Instead, I was the one who got the biggest surprise. It might sound strange, but I am actually very thankful for that day. Hard truths can be the painful start of a better and more honest future. They force us to stop believing in stories that are not actually true. I did not lose my marriage at the edge of that lake. I lost it when the honesty between us went away. The trip to the cabin just revealed what had been broken for a very long time. I feel ready now to move on with my new life, knowing that I am living in the truth and moving forward.